Let's just call it quits.
We won't call it quits. We'll call it the start.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hazel and this is my co-host Tanner Dykstra, who's not my friend anymore. And today we're going to be talking about the Banshees of Inisherin, the latest movie from Martin McDonagh, reuniting Colin Farrell and Gleeson from one of my favorites, In Bruges. And we have gotten a chance to see it in theaters and we're very excited to talk to you about it. But if you want to talk to us about this movie or any other myriad movies that we are reviewing and have reviewed and will review in the future, join our Discord. That link is in the top of the description. And while you're down there, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Tanner, you and I have seen The Banshees of Inisherin.
Yes.
A movie that I would say I wasn't quite sure what to think about when I was going into it. I'd maybe seen a trailer once. But how did you feel about this movie?
Tucker, I feel that you're correct. I feel like a lot of people are saying, I know almost nothing about this going into this. I couldn't even tell you if I saw a trailer for this movie. And that just speaks to how well it was sold on. It is Martin McDonagh's new movie. Yep. He's bringing back Colin Farrell. He's bringing back Gleeson. And it worked. It got me into the seat for this, frankly, much funnier movie than I expected. Mm-hmm. Much more beautiful movie than I expected. Yeah. Visually and dramatically, of course. Mm-hmm. And I mean, everyone who is saying that this is a strong contender for awards, especially as Oscar season nears, as we're looking down the barrel of it, I wholeheartedly agree. There is not a single person in this movie who I would say turns in a bad performance, and they are all excelling on the brilliant McDonagh script they had to work with here.
Yeah, and it's the McDonagh script that gets a nice twist to it, because frankly, I've never heard Irish dialogue to this degree, and the mannerisms of their way of speaking and the different ways that they use certain words is a little tough for an American-born and American-bred and raised individual to get into. But once you're in there and you start recognizing the ways that their sentences are structured differently and their tone of voice is inflected in different moods, there's a different kind of comedy there in terms of the dryness or the seriousness or the way they take their jabs that makes it feel really fresh and distinct from everything else. I do want to say, though, with what you're saying about this being a frontrunner for all these awards, I half-heartedly agree. Oh. I think it is a good contender for a lot of this. I think this is a good movie, but I was frankly not blown away by a couple aspects of this film. I think they're high across the bar, but not best of the year for me. You know, it's up there. It's probably in my top 20 of the year, but it's not topping my list, and I think that's because maybe I need another viewing of this movie, but I do think that tonally it felt a little rocky to me because I was always uncomfortable in the movie trying to tell if a scene was going to be funny or really dark and serious. And when it was dark and serious, it would be there's very long sequences in this movie where not a lot happens, a lot of downtime in this movie. And I think I was maybe just scraping for a little more comedic bite that I loved so much out of Seven Psychopaths and In Bruges. But this movie does take a more serious and methodical approach. It's a much slower film than most of McDonagh's other films. And I think maybe that's just why it didn't land completely for me, as I was hoping for it to be more snarky than it was.
Sure. It's been a number of years since I've seen In Bruges, which is, maybe the most pertinent film to discussing Martin McDonagh's hand when approaching the Banshees of Inisherin. But I kind of feel that it's similar in ways, in a number of ways. I mean, in Bruges, you have Colin Farrell's character. His sort of whole internal conflict is that he killed a kid. Yeah. And that he wants to commit suicide, and those are very deep, dark things that then some dark comedy is drawn out of. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's something similar here. Obviously we aren't dealing with things as serious as that, but we are dealing with sort of this sort of older male friendship that at the action of one Brendan Gleeson's character falls apart. He's like, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. And that is, as we come to find out, born out of his, he's waning in his years and he's like, I want to do something meaningful and lasting with my life. And that's not going to happen in my friendship with you, Colin Farrell. Yeah. And Colin Farrell he's like, that I just can't reconcile that. What do you mean? And that causes internal conflict in him. He's like, am I just some am I going to be like a footnote in history essentially, and am I going to be completely forgotten? Who am I to the people in my life essentially? And I think that that is born across Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson's performances very well, and of course the writing of these scenes, which I feel very narrowly walk that tightrope of. You are laughing a lot in this movie.
Definitely.
Because Farrell and Gleeson are very good comedic actors with McDonagh's brand of comedy. That very dry, that fits very well with the 20th century Irish setting.
Yeah, and it is that setting that is my categorical positive for this film. Of course, I think that all the actors did very well, as I want to get into, but visually is where this movie single-handedly excels above all its other aspects for me, is drinking in the color of the Irish countryside and seeing the architecture and the way of life and getting to sort of to know different landmarks across this town that they live in and the culture. It is a really fascinating look into a corner of the world that we don't see presented in this high fidelity, really crisp, colorful visuals that McDonagh captures here. And I think that it is that color palette and the way that things are framed and the rolling grassy hills and low rock walls there's rock walls everywhere here. And, you know, I don't know why, but it looks cool. And that is my biggest takeaway from this film is I'm so glad that they went this route to capture presumably very real locations, to capture a corner of the world that we don't see on movies of this caliber with actors of this caliber, and it just is really refreshing to see such a colorful, well realized place in a film. So the backdrop is where I'm like, yes, I love this.
Absolutely agree, Tucker. Obviously, there are a lot of beautiful shots of the cliffs of this Irish island, this island off the coast of Ireland, Inisherin.
The fjords.
But I also love the interior shots in this. I think McDonagh and the cinematographer, who I don't know, I'm very sorry. They take a very adept hand in this. There's one particular scene during the nighttime when there's some moonlight streaming into Brendan Gleeson's bedroom, and he's holding up his hand for a reason that may or may not be a spoiler. I'll let the audience, if you haven't seen this movie, go in figuring out why he might be inspecting his hand so closely. But yeah, that is just some beautiful stuff there, and yeah, just the lighting in all these interiors, because this is obviously. It's not pre-electricity, but they don't have electricity on this island.
They don't have much.
They don't have much. But, you know, that's all right. You know, they make do with what they have in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's the making do with what they have that I think this movie plays with in ways that both please me and left me maybe wanting a little more. Because this film, in its location, in its time setting, in its conflict between the characters, is, you know, I came up with this phrase, it came to me in a flash of light. Oh. It's very low concept. This is about as basic of a setting and a concept and a conflict as you can get. And I think that there's certainly merit to that, of having such a disconnect from other cultures. The only interaction that we get in this small island village with other cultures is seeing explosions off on the horizon as people on mainland Ireland are fighting their civil war. And that disconnect is very interesting in the way that it plays into the themes of not necessarily knowing if your life is going to be fulfilling or if you're going to be remembered in the annals of history. And that all does play really nicely into those themes, as I was saying. But I do think that the fact that we are centered around such a low concept place, and it ostensibly is just the pub, the field, and two houses, and like the shop, it did feel kind of empty to me. And obviously from a setting perspective that is intended, but I do think that McDonagh works his best work with my two favorites of his films of his, In Bruges and Seven Psychopaths, when there's a lot more kineticism going on, a lot more places to be and characters to interact with, and things here are low key, and scenes will just be someone sitting there or walking across a hill with their cows for, you know, like 20 seconds or whatever. And it's that slowness and dryness that I think turned me away from this slightly more than those other ones, which I love categorically.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I didn't necessarily feel the slowness. I feel like it certainly has a sense of patience to it, but I wasn't like, this moment right now
is a good way to describe
is slow. And I think it's maybe similar in pacing to his previous Best Picture nominee, Three Billboards in Ebbing, Missouri, where, you know, outside of it. Oh, excuse me. I got the preposition wrong there. But no, I think it is contemplative,
Yeah.
like that film, with interspersed moments of some action, I guess, relative to, of course, the story material.
Yeah.
And one person I do want to get to, because I think, obviously we go into this knowing Colin Farrell is going to be great, knowing Brendan Gleeson is going to be great, but we have an up and comer, and that is Barry Keoghan. Who is maybe working his way up to be one of these upper echelon Irish actors. Barry Keoghan is fantastic in this film. Every line he delivers is gold.
Yeah.
And that is in his delivery, of course, and his sort of stilted sort of delivery, I'll call it, but also the lines that McDonagh has for him and the direction that he no doubt gave him on set on how to deliver these things makes him, he's such an odd little character in this
really
movie.
is.
And
He's a silly little freak.
Yeah, he's like the de facto friend that Colin Farrell falls back on to like confide in about like what's going on, but then Barry Keoghan's just throwing all this weird shit at him, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and he is the scene stealer for me. I think that Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell are good to great in this film in certain moments, but their characters have a lot more introspective things going on. And from a plot level, they're intended to be very subdued guys for the most of most of the movie. Colin Farrell is notoriously, to the characters around him, kind of a dull guy. He's nice, but he's kind of simple. And he doesn't have much going on up above. But what's even less going on up above is Barry Keoghan's character. And that really makes him a thrill to watch, because you never know what he's going to do next. Is he going to pick something up and say something silly about it? Is he going to throw something? Is he going to go off and just wander away? He feels like such a breath of fresh air in this movie because his lines consistently made me laugh. I was, as I said, on the fence of, should I be laughing at this? Is this serious? Is this meant to be played for a laugh in some of the other sequences? But when Barry Keoghan's on screen, I'm like, nope, this is going to be funny. And his line delivery and his mannerisms are so unique that I'm like, man, this is his best performance, I think, out of everything I've seen him in.
Honestly, I could be convinced. I'd have to do a little bit of introspection, but I could be convinced. And Tucker, I want to get to the point of what you were saying about not really feeling sure what tone McDonagh was trying to strike in some of these moments. I think it is a mixed tone. You mixed emotions like that. You may be supposed to laugh and feel bad at the same time, and I feel that is nowhere better exemplified. That's the word.
Yep.
In the scene where Barry Keoghan's character Dominic is sort of, he has a thing for Colin Farrell's character's sister, whose name is Chauvin. And he confesses his love to her, and she's like, no. And he's like, in that moment, he has a number of reaction lines that are equal parts hilarious in context, but also heartbreaking. I think one particular one is like, well, there goes that dream. And, he sort of like looks off in the distance, and you noted this one, which is well, I better get over there and do that thing I was gonna do over there earlier.
Yeah, really, really funny.
Yes. And I wrote down a lot of my favorite lines in this. I'm not going to say them all because I think they are great to hear in context for the first time, not knowing what these characters are going to say. The little mannerisms that Colin Farrell has, the little like expletives, I guess you could call them, that he repeatedly says in this are gold to me as well. I thought Banshees of Inisherin was hilarious, heart-wrenching at moments, and beautiful looking all at once. So I'm going to give Banshees of Inisherin a 9.5.
All right, you squeezed that one out. Yeah, I'm going to go about a point lower. I'm going to go with an 8.6. I think that this movie could go up if I watched it again. I understood a little bit more of the thematics better. But on a first viewing, from what I've loved out of previous works from Martin McDonagh, this was missing a little bit of that high conceptness, that sense of momentum and kineticism that I loved so much in the other ones. But that's okay. That doesn't mean I didn't like the movie at all. I mean, I gave it a great score. I loved so many aspects of it. However, if this is the direction that Martin McDonagh wants to go in, of slowing things down and having his humor be delivered in more subdued ways, I'm proud of him for that. But I just don't know if that direction is necessary for me. However, this movie will probably be in a bunch of awards conversations, and so we might be reviewing it for Quest.
I'd say there's a good chance.
thank you very much for watching this, everyone. I'm very glad that you joined us here to talk about Banshees of Inisherin. Leave your thoughts down below if you have seen it or what you think of Martin McDonagh's other works, how this stacks up, what's your ranking. He only has 4 films, I believe, so, might as well drop that and pretty short. And we will be reviewing many other movies coming up in the future, so we will see you guys then. Yeah, but they got us so advice.
Yeah. Hi, how you doing there, boys? Oh, you old Patrick Sullivan. Patrick Sullivan.
All right.
Patrick Sullivan.
Let's get right
Colin
into it.
Darty. Oh, Darty. Oh, it's the Darties. Oh, the Banshees. Oh, they haunt me, the Banshees of Inisherin.